Vikings are facing a third string quarterback, but we all know that is far from any kind of guarantee. We also have prop bets and bold predictions here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a Friday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Pretty cool stuff. We have an app on Roku and Amazon Fire now. So if you have Amazon Fire or Roku, just look up Locked On Minnesota. You can get every Minnesota sports. Wild just started. Wolves, Twins, me, Locked On Minnesota sports feed, all the shows on that. Really cool stuff. I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. And today, final time we get to talk before this Vikings-Dolphins game. Last one before the bye. Vikings will either go into the bye 4-2 or 5-1. And if you told us that before the season, we'd all be pretty happy. So this one feels a little bit like playing with house money, especially because they're starting a backup quarterback. This was looking like one of the hardest games on the schedule if Tua was going to play, just because of the wide receivers and the deep throwing and the way they run the ball. Obviously a lot less formidable now, but still 3.5-point favorites or 3-point favorites, depending on when you took the line. That's at BetOnline, by the way, which we will get into more lines and grambles like that in a bit, as well as your boldest predictions. But before we get into that, I just want to sort of generically talk about it a little bit. So there's a few things that I've sort of learned about the Dolphins talking to Kyle Krabs yesterday on Crossover Thursday. Go listen to that. Talking to Travis Wingfield, who does the Drive Time podcast, the Dolphins podcast, also formerly of Locked On. It feels like the Dolphins match up really well with the Vikings in a way that's not good for us. For one, they're very good at stopping zone run schemes. That was something that Travis talked to me about, that they are, historically, they've been very good at this. Now, different staff and stuff, right? So who knows? But when they go up against zone-focused teams, you can see them do this to the Bengals a couple weeks ago. They love to flatten out the front, do bear fronts. We have not seen a lot of bear fronts. We've seen some, but we haven't seen like a team that's like living in it. And I'm really curious to see what the Vikings do here. So what's a bear front? That is a 5-man front, 5-man defensive line, 5-man surface, you might call it, which has 2 defensive ends outside the tackles like normal and 3 defensive tackles inside the offensive tackles. So you'll have, it's like having 2-3 techs and a nose tackle kind of, and then like 2 defensive ends. It is a very common tight front. It's a very common we don't want the run front. It's something that is sort of the go-to answer against zone running schemes, and that's what the Vikings like to be. Now, some of the Vikings' answers to bear fronts, we have seen them run, but those are answers McVay used against bear fronts. Things like running strong with a tight end, climbing up to the second level, just the way the gaps work out, like that can work out really well. I am so curious to see how the Vikings approach that. I think there's a lot of possible right answers. There's a lot of possible wrong answers. And I just don't know what they're going to do. So I'm just like genuinely really curious. But if you want to worry about some other matchups, they're really banged up, but it seems like a lot of their principal people are going to play. Xavier Howard is saying that he feels like he's going to be good to go. Tyreek Hill, despite being in a walking boot after last week's game, he was a full participant. Jalen Waddle, full participant. They actually will probably have Teddy Bridgewater. It seems like where he's at in the concussion protocol is going to be available, but because he didn't practice all week, they're still not going to start him. But hey, if Skylar Thompson is a catastrophe, we could see Teddy in like the second half or something, right? Like that is in the cards a little bit. So they look really banged up on the injury report, but the principal players that we're like watching feels like most of those guys are going to play. So I'm not exactly taking that for granted. So that means that we get Tyreek Hill, maybe a hobbled Tyreek Hill without all of his normal speed, against Patrick Peterson, who has struggled with that, which means to me, I think we need to put a safety over Patrick Peterson, which sucks. That's not what he's supposed to be for, right? But he's not getting paid what he got paid last year. And so I think the expectation can be a little bit lower. I think you got to give him some help. Now, Cam Dantzler had an excellent game against the Bears. He has strung together a pretty good season, I think. So that means leaving him in more at least like man deep situations, not full man to man, not like full Meg coverage, but like, man with a little help inside or something like that, or mod is what you'd call that. I think you can do that with Cam Dantzler. So that just means you would do like quarter, half, and you put the half side wherever Patrick Peterson is, which is usually on the left. So you'd call like a luggage left or whatever. It just determines where the half side is instead of going strong or weak. And the problem with that is you let the Dolphins dictate the matchups then, and they can put Tyreek Hill wherever they want. If they want him against the quarter side, if they want him against the half side, they can just have that because you're trying to protect a particular player. So I don't want to have to rely on that, but I think that's what I would do just because I'm really scared of that particular matchup. On the other side, on the offensive line, the Dolphins pass rush has struggled to win one-on-one, and they have been forced to blitz a lot. And so I've been talking about this a lot. Kevin O'Connell talked about this. They lead the league in 0, which means no deep safeties. We are blitzing. We're coming after you. So we got to have those blitz counters ready to go. We have to have a hot route on everything. We have to have our protection squared away. That's going to be a huge thing. If you can pick up some blitzes, you can punish and keep up. But I think that regardless, because their front four has struggled to get home, they're going to blitz no matter what. And, come hell or high water. So let's make it hell. That's some of the stuff that I think this game will come down to for a more in-depth discussion. Check out Crossover Thursday with Locked On Dolphins. That's yesterday's episode. But because for now, I would like to transition to You Betcha for some prop bets and, of course, bold predictions coming up a little later. But first things first, let me talk to you about LinkedIn. It is your time. It's hiring time. And if you are trying to find somebody for your small business, it's so important that you can get like a streamlined way to get yourself the candidates that you need. If you don't have any screening questions or any of the other tools that come with LinkedIn Jobs, you might be forced sifting through way too many resumes. So let LinkedIn help you efficiently find the person that you're looking for. Their screening questions and their whole apparatus makes it really easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience that you are looking for. End of the year is coming up. It's time to finish strong, and LinkedIn Jobs helps small businesses. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you want more in-depth reviewing of all of these games, I have now put up my whole week's worth of stuff on Patreon. We've got a Darisaw episode, a Kirk Cousins, what he was doing at the line of scrimmage, all those audibles he was calling. What was that? What was he looking at? That is one I'm really, really happy with how that one turned out. And then a Cam Dantzler one that came out on Thursday about his big day. You can find that on patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL, film breakdowns and stuff, plus random blog posts, and of course the history of the Minnesota Vikings documentary that I made in the offseason. Pretty good thing to have if you want something to do on the bye week. Anyways, let's move on to You Betcha. It is our Grambling segment. All of these lines are from BetOnline, at least as I'm looking at them right now. You can find that all at BetOnline. More on them in a second, but let's go over some of those lines. So this is just me picking out a handful of bets that I like. Somebody talked to me about this a couple weeks ago about how like my bets kind of conflicted with each other. What kind of game do you think it's going to be? These aren't meant to all be parlayed together. Pick and choose the ones you like or don't. I don't know. I'm not your dad. Let's start with, here's something I'm going to be doing on these all the time. I'm just going to take opposing Vikings team points overs until they start stopping people, because the defense I still think is a little overrated, by the betting market. I don't think the betting market has realized how much the defense is struggling, and I think there's an edge to be found there. So Dolphins right now, their over is 20.5. I know they got a third string quarterback, but they are going to be able to run the ball. Spoiler, I'm also taking a Raheem Mostert over 60.5. I've seen him 58.5 other places too. But as I'm looking at BetOnline right now, he's at 60.5. I'm taking that. I'm taking the Dolphins to be able to run the ball. I think Skylar Thompson will be able to run the ball. And I do think that with the state of this defense, 21 points is not that much to ask. So I'm taking the Dolphins over 20.5. I'm taking Raheem Mostert over 60.5 rushing yards. I'm also taking a Viking over. Thielen over 4.5 receptions. I think Xavier Howard's going to play in this one. And I think the Dolphins will be willing. They'll be blitzing a lot. But I do think that they'll be willing to sell out appropriately to stymie Justin Jefferson, and that means we get Adam Thielen on like Noah Igbenogany or whoever they've got over there. It's not going to be Byron Jones. He's still on PUP. So Thielen on a corner the Dolphins would rather not have out there. Over 4.5 receptions, I think, is a good bet. And then the other one I'm going to do is BetOnline. Very deep in the game props, you can find stuff like this one. Largest lead under 14.5. That means nobody in this game will ever lead by more than 14 points. I see this as a fairly evenly matched game, roster to roster. That's including the third string quarterback. I've been a big fan of Miami's roster. I've been singing their praises a lot on Locked On NFL. I like where the Dolphins are at. It's just that they're starting a third string quarterback, and I think that brings them down to where the Vikings are at right now, which is a very imperfect place. I see these as fairly evenly matched teams. The Dolphins are very well suited to stop our run game and to run on us. I think we're very well suited because of the way that we play defense to stop them from being able to throw moonballs to Tyreek Hill. That's the whole point of keeping everybody on the roof all the time and all those safeties playing super soft. The whole point is to take away those bombs and forcing the Dolphins into a world where they have to make more offense, or like make a real offense. I think that prevents things from becoming a blowout. I think this will be a back and forth kind of game. And so I say that there will not be a lead greater than 14 points. Largest lead under 14.5. That's at -117 too. Saying nobody will get a 3-score lead in this game feels like I should have it better I should have to pay more than -117 for it. So I feel pretty good about that one. Real quick, I also want to revisit my bets from last week. I didn't do great. I went 1 for 4. The only one I got was the little win. I took that the Vikings would win by between 1 and 13 points, which did happen. They won by 7. But I had the under in that game, 44.5. Didn't hit that. I was unwise to bet unders in a game with the Vikings defense in it. Fields hit his over, which was 161.5, and Dalvin Cook hit his over. I had him under 78.5. So taking unders was a bad move. I've learned my lesson. All right, overs forever. Taking opponent overs. I'm taking Vikings overs. We're gonna live in overs until the Vikings show that they can control a game and slow it down. That's the lesson we're learning, of course, overreacting to losses. That's how the Vegas loves you to do it. Those lines and a lot more can be found at betonline.net. You have their player props builder. That's where I found a lot of this stuff. You have just regular betting spreads and lines. You can bet on much more than just Vikings games. You can bet on anything in the NFL, college football, NHL just kicking up, MLB playoffs. You can bet on all of that stuff. And you can even bet right in the middle of a live game. If, say, you're watching the worst Thursday night game you've ever watched and it's, 3-0 at halftime? Or 6-0 at halftime or something like that? You can just say, I think this is going to hit the under. And you can bet that right at halftime. Or whenever you want. You can find all of that and much, much more at betonline.net, where the game starts. It is time to get bold. It's time for the bold prediction segment. This is the last thing of the week, and it's always my favorite thing of the week because it gets super degenerate and it's very unserious, and that brings me joy. Bold Predictions is a place for us to get our silliest takes out there. There's no punishment for being wrong because it's a bold prediction, but you better be bold about it. So the way this always works, I put out a call on Thursdays. You give me your bold predictions. I will read the ones I read off last time, but I usually pick like 5 or 6 of them. And we will go from there. So last week, we had a couple of like exact score predictions that didn't come true. We had the Bears becoming the first team since 1923 Chicago Cardinals to score exactly 4 points in an NFL game. Love the spirit, didn't get there. The Vikings we also had one from Daniel Hagan. First one was from 1991 Ford Tempo enthusiast. We also had one from Daniel Hagan who said that the Vikings would win 26-2 in honor of the Chicago Marathon. Again, didn't get there. Nakaka said that Justin Jefferson would get more receiving yards than the Bears got total yards. Obviously didn't get there. You had, I think, the Justin Jefferson half of this. Like, he had to have a really big day, and he did. But you didn't get the Chicago has to have a hilariously bad day. Maybe you would have got that with this Thursday night game. But alas, we did not get there. James K. said that the number of sacks Fields takes will be equivalent to the yards per attempt surrendered by the Vikings, rounded to the nearest integer. The Vikings were only able to generate 2 sacks, so no. Legend of Korra said that the Vikings would win by 10 points, but they would only pull away in the last few minutes of the game. I was willing to give you some leeway, like they could have been more than 10 points, and we would see what it meant there. They did have a comeback in the last few minutes of the game, but they only won by 7, so I don't think I could give you this one. And then Omar said that not 1, but 2 Kirk Cousins rushing touchdowns, but not just any rushing touchdowns. They had to be like actual scrambles, 5+ yards, 10+ yards. We had one sneak that was pretty clearly not what you meant. I think you very clearly meant not sneaks, and there was only one anyways. So let's move on to week 6. I only got 5 for this week that I liked. Well, I liked a bunch. I only picked 5. First one comes from Peter Larson, who said that the yardage of the longest play of the game will match the temperature high in Miami on game day. So right now the forecast is somewhere in the 80s. So that means that there will be an 80-some yard play. And because that is probably going to be very high, it is supposed to be very hot and very humid. They're actually preparing to play in a very hot game. I am not going to make you specifically nail the degree. I will give you an over on this. So that the yardage of the longest play will be over the temperature on game day, and I will give you a tie as well. So yeah, over or equal to the highest temperature on game day, because just making it bold via specificity is never all that fun. Kyle Slaby, the champ, the only one to ever get one of these, says that 4 different players will complete pass attempts in this game. That is a fascinating one to think about, because you think about it, you go, oh, what are they going to have, like multiple trick plays or something? And not necessarily, but that's probably going to have to be part of it. But you'll have your 2 quarterbacks, right? So that's easy. And then you might need to have another Miami quarterback, like if Teddy Bridgewater comes in because Skylar Thompson is struggling, that's 3. And then you just need a trick play, just a Justin Jefferson pass or something like that. I don't think they bust that kind of thing out 2 weeks in a row. That's the kind of thing you kind of have to let it lie for 4 games so that you can't guarantee that your opponent is always going to be studying your very last game. So you don't want to play right into that. But hey, in November, December, you might want to bust it out again. So I don't think we do that, but there are weird ways to backdoor this one, and I really like the spirit there. Skull Actuary says that the Miami wide receivers will get more rushing touchdowns than the running backs, and their running backs get more receiving touchdowns than the wide receivers. I love the chaotic energy of this, jet sweep touchdowns to Tyreek Hill, and then the stupid little receiving touchdown to like Myles Gaskin or whoever. Absolutely love that. What's interesting is that you only said that this for Miami. I think I will think about it depending on how chaotic the game feels. I will think about giving this to you if Minnesota does this, just to give you an extra out. But either way, very fun, very bold. We have a lot of different, we got a couple of different ones coming up here about every player that scores has to be this guy or that kind of guy. The first one comes from Caleb Cook, who said that every player that scores for the Vikings went to college in Florida. This one is awesome. I love this because it is only 4 players, but one of them is Greg Joseph, who went to Florida Atlantic, and Dalvin Cook, and I'm counting KJ Osborne because even though he was mostly a Buffalo guy, he did spend a year at Miami, so he did go to college in Florida. He didn't go to college in Florida for long, but you did not say that they had to go for long. You just said that they had to go. And also Jonathan Bullard is here. So you could get a fumble return touchdown from Jonathan Bullard and you would still be in this, which if that happened and you hit this, like, my goodness, we would be partying. I love that. That's the only 4 players. So that would mean no Justin Jefferson, no Adam Thielen, no Alexander Madison, Boise State, none of any of that stuff. No Irv Smith, just those 4 players: Dalvin Cook, Greg Joseph, KJ Osborne, and Jonathan Bullard. And the final one comes from Kyle Barker, who says that all of the offensive touchdowns will be scored by players drafted in the 7th round or undrafted. So I looked up who these players could be beforehand. I believe there's only 3 skill players on the Vikings that fit this bill: Johnny Munt, CJ Ham, and Adam Thielen. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll correct that later, but I do not believe that there is a lot of opportunity for offensive touchdowns to be scored by other players than that. I mean, you do get Adam Thielen, so you could have a 2-touchdown Adam Thielen game and just cash this, right? The Dolphins, on the other hand, it feels not even that bold. They have like 8 players here: Cedric Wilson, Trent Sherfield, Raheem Mostert, Edmonds, Gass. Their whole running back room basically is undrafted or 7th round. Skylar Thompson himself is a 7th rounder, and that's why he said that, I think, because we were going up against the 7th round rookie. And Ingold, the fullback. So they have a bunch of role players, but no Jalen Waddle, no Tyreek Hill, who was, I believe, a 5th round pick. You're still missing some of the principal players. So you're basically saying random role players get every touchdown, which, heck yeah, let's tilt some fantasy players today. In terms of what's going to happen in this one, in a broad sense, I'll be honest, I have struggled to figure out what is going to happen in this one because I just am struggling to pin down exactly what we're going to see from the Miami Dolphins. If I could guarantee health and that they would kind of be the team that they always are, like if Tua were playing, I would say, okay, this is a team that does this, this, and that, and this is how we prepare and all that. And I can do some of that. But because it's a quarterback we don't know much about, because they're so banged up all over the place, it feels like this could go any number of ways. And it's just one of those where I could see it being, I would be surprised if it were like a really convincing win by either team. I do think it's going to be something of a back and forth contest. Maybe that's just because I'm so used to watching Vikings games that are back and forth contests. It's hard for me to envision just the Vikings just strolling into Miami and killing them. And it's also hard for me to envision, even if they do get down 3 scores, it's hard for me to envision that being the end of the game. They've, that Lions game sort of proved something to me where they can come back from that. I've said it a whole bunch of places. I said it yesterday. My prediction right now is just going chalk, 23-20. That is the over-under. That's the spread, like implies a 23-20 Vikings win, which I think technically doesn't cover because it's 3.5, but on the hook point. But it is something like that. I'm going chalk because I just don't know what to make of this one. So I'll just like leave it at chalk. But I don't know. Leave me your predictions. Send them to me. If you're watching on YouTube, leave them in the comments, or otherwise you can tweet them at me at Luke Braun NFL. I want to hear your predictions for this one, bold or otherwise, but just give me your scores and stuff too, because I don't know what to make of this one, and I want to see if there's anybody out there that has a better sense than I do, and maybe I'll circle back and give you a shout out if you're right. So I will see you all next week. We'll be talking about this one, and then we go into the bye week. I don't know what I'm going to do for the bye week, how I'm going to fill the time, but we'll figure out something. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the Saints game, which I couldn't really talk about because I was on vacation, or maybe I'll just do something a little more evergreen. We'll chit chat. It'll be fun. I will see you all next week. And as always, Skol.